There are certain things in tech that sound too good to be true, like unlimited data, Facebook cares about your privacy, or $999 MacBook Pro with OLED display. I mean, come on. The phrase alone sounds like a fever dream cooked up by someone high on keynote fumes and Reddit leaks. But here we are. Apple might actually be making a $999 OLED MacBook. And not just any MacBook, it's an M5 MacBook. And everyone's losing their minds over it. Now let's pump the brakes a bit, because while this all sounds amazing on paper, there's a lot going here. So let's break it down like it's a late night infomercial for nerds. You won't believe what Apple is planning. New OLED screen, M5 chip, and all this for just $999. But wait, there is more. Okay, first, let's talk about the legendary M5 chip. Apple Silicon has been cooking since M1, and by the time we hit M3 and M4, things were already crazy fast. The M5? That's rumored to be on TSMC's 2nd Gen 3nm process, with better battery efficiency, faster CPU and GPU cores, and even more neural engine power to handle your daily AI-enhanced coffee orders. It's supposedly pacing a 10-core CPU and 12-core GPU for the base model. That's more power than most people need to play Stardew Valley and pretend to work. But here's where things get real weird. People saw M5 and OLED and MacBook and just assumed it meant a MacBook Pro, because who would expect an OLED MacBook Air, right? Well, plot twist, that $999 rumor? Yep, that's for the 13-inch M5 MacBook Air, not the Pro unfortunately. I hate to burst the hype bubble, but Apple definitely ain't giving away a Pro for just $999. Unless it comes with a tiny screen, no fans, and the keyboard from 2016. That being said, even if it's the Air, a $999 OLED MacBook is still bonkers and nuts. OLED displays have better contrast, true blacks, and make every single thing from spreadsheets to Netflix look like a work of art. Rumors say it'll be a Samsung-made tandem OLED panel. Same tech we might see in future iPads and even iMacs. So yes, it's not the cheap OLED that burns in after just 6 months. This is the good stuff. And let's be honest, Apple knows how to make a screen look real sexy. Remember when they introduced the Retina displays and suddenly everybody realized how blurry their old laptop was? That's gonna happen again, except now it'll be OLED-induced jealousy. The M5 OLED MacBook Air will be the one all your coworkers suddenly accidentally spill their coffee on, just so they can buy a new one. But we can't forget the MacBook Pro models. Rumors suggest we'll get 14-inch and 16-inch M5 Pro and Max versions early next year. Those will obviously have OLED too, plus better cooling, better speakers, more RAM, more ports, and about 10 extra pounds of smugness and all that zazz. But they will definitely cost way more. We are talking $2,000+ range. So yes, the $999 hype train is really just for the Air. Still, that price is a killer. $999 for an M5 with OLED? That is dangerously close to Windows laptop territory. You can still get a decent Dell XPS 13, a mid-range Razer, or even a tricked-out Chromebook for that price, and Apple knows it. That's why this is such a strange strategic move. They're not just flexing with hardware, they're coming for the entire mid-range laptop market. But let's compare Apple to, well, Windows as always. Most $999 Windows laptops are plastic, have IPS panels, maybe 8 gigs of RAM, and a fan that sounds like a jet engine when you open Google Chrome. Meanwhile, the rumored OLED MacBook Air will be metal, fanless, have Apple Silicon performance, and probably weigh less than your average anxiety. Now how about the software support? Apple's definitely got the reputation here. Buy a MacBook today and it'll get Mac OS updates 7 years from now. Compare that to some Windows machines that barely survive 3 years before the updates stop, and everything turns into a slow motion slideshow. So even if the M5 Air is just $999, you're getting years of smooth sailing. And then there is battery life. Let's not all forget that Apple Silicon runs laps around times 86 in efficiency. Even with an OLED screen, the M5 MacBook Air is expected to get 15 plus hours of real world use. Not lab conditions where Wi-Fi is off and brightness is 3% battery life. I mean actual YouTube, Zoom, Google Docs, Microsoft Teams and Spotify battery life. But of course, there are trade-offs. A $999 MacBook Air with OLED won't have fans, which means sustained performance may throttle under heavy workloads. And storage probably starts at just 256 gigabytes. If you want more, you'll pay Apple tax, and that is really expensive. Same with the RAM. You want 16 gigs? That'll be $200 more, please. It's like ordering fries and getting charged for salt. And then there is the timing. Rumors say Apple might launch the OLED M5 MacBook Air in spring or summer 2026, which yes is a while away, but it's clear the pipeline is moving. Apple introduced liquid glass in iOS 26. Samsung is working on tandem OLED. All signs point to Apple being serious about moving the entire MacBook lineup to OLED. Also, do not forget that Samsung, the very company rumored to be supplying these OLED panels to Apple, is also working on their own OLED laptops and even foldables, which we've already seen. So this ain't just Apple being futuristic. It's an arms race, kind of like the space race, and Apple's finally putting down the Retina sniper rifle and busting out the OLED bazooka. Also, let's not forget where this fits in Apple's lineup. The current M5 MacBook Air starts at $1,100, M3 is even more, M4 even more. So dropping the M5 OLED version at $999 would be a shock to the system. It means they're either undercutting themselves or planning to phase out lower tier models. And Apple doesn't do price cuts lightly, we all know that. There's got to be a bigger play here, a bigger scandal. Probably a combination of market pressure, education sales, and a quiet goodbye to the older Retina IPS displays. It could also be Apple looking to dominate back to school season, especially in emerging markets like India and Southeast Asia. Students and young creatives want Macs, but they also want to eat and pay rent. A $999 OLED MacBook is their way in, and Apple's way of making sure nobody dares to touch a Windows machine again. And then there is the design. If we go by Apple's current direction, the new MacBook Air with OLED probably keeps the flat edges, MagSafe, 2 USB-C ports, and 1080p webcam. Maybe they will shrink the bezels a bit or make the whole thing even thinner, since OLED panels don't even need backlighting. You get a sleeker machine with better visuals and the same boring silver and space grey. Maybe they throw in a fun color for marketing. Probably not, to be honest. But do not expect miracles like Jesus walking on water. The base model might skimp on things like a laminated anti-glare layer or high refresh rate. It'll be a gorgeous screen for sure, but you'll need to shell out for the 14-inch Pro if you want all the bells and whistles. And finally, let's be real here. $999 sounds great until you hit the checkout button. That's when you realize you want more RAM, then more storage, then maybe even AppleCare, and a dongle because Apple refuses to put in an HDMI port. Suddenly, your $999 laptop is kissing and flirting with the $1,600, and you're asking yourself if you really need a laptop at all, or if you can just write your thesis on your iPhone. So yes, the $999 OLED M5 MacBook is real, probably, and it's exciting, definitely. But as always, don't get swept away by the hype. Ask the real questions. What's included? What is missing? And how much more are you really gonna pay once you check all the boxes? Still, even with all that garbage and I don't know, Apple dropping a $999 OLED MacBook, Air or not, is a huge deal. It definitely shakes up the industry. It presses the competitors and it sets a new standard for what a premium laptop can be at under $1,000. But just to remember, nothing in life is on easy mode and is ever really $999. Definitely not when Apple's in charge. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Go hug your current laptop. Its days are definitely numbered. The OLED wave is coming. See ya.